Hi everybody, this is Agnes from Sediment, and today let's dissect red grape varieties of Bordeaux in a blind tasting. Now, what do I mean by that? A classic red Bordeaux blend, no matter where it is produced, is usually made from traditional Bordeaux grape varieties. Most commonly, it is a combination of Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot and Cabernet Franc. Other varieties may also be included, like the increasingly more popular Petit Verdot, as well as Malbec and Carmenere. Usually, one grape will dominate while others will play a supportive role. Interestingly, we rarely discuss specific percentages of each grape variety when we are talking about Bordeaux wines. Instead, we focus on the structure, power, elegance, tannin, acidity, and maturity that define them. So it might not be the smartest thing from my side to reduce these wines down to just their grape varieties, as they most certainly are more than that. However, I do think that for study purposes, understanding how each grape behaves and what it contributes or highlights in the blend is essential to truly understanding the wine. When I began studying wine, I was taught that one of the greatest red grape varieties, Cabernet Sauvignon, certainly highly distinct and age-worthy, often can lack fleshiness. It has high acidity, elevated tannins, a deep ruby color, and almost always betrays its presence by showing black currant notes, either as fruit or as black currant leaf character, which sometimes indicates unripeness. Indeed, it used to ripen 2 weeks or more later than Merlot. For this reason, Merlot was a perfect blending partner. It ripens earlier, so was a good insurance and brought much needed flesh and fruitiness to the Cabernet Sauvignon's structured bones. Though Merlot can also develop elevated levels of tannins, they are not as focused as those of Cabernet Sauvignon and often are hidden behind rich fruit. Flavor-wise, Merlot has this distinct plump character, and since it can lose acidity rather quickly, it makes a perfect pair with Cabernet Sauvignon, which retains its acidity quite well. Additionally, while I think of Cabernet Sauvignon as a grape that can make full-bodied red wines, it sometimes can lack weight on mid-palate, a gap that Merlot happily always fills. However, Cabernet Sauvignon can have a fleshy character, though it may be harder to achieve in Bordeaux, which is why in Napa, Cabernet Sauvignon is frequently bottled as a monovarietal wine. Napa's climate allows Cabernet to reach that fleshy fruit stage almost every year without the need for Merlot. This is the beauty of terroir right here. Merlot is a grape variety I've been thinking a lot lately. When did we learn to hate it? Despite some winemakers producing exceptional Merlots that certainly fetch premium prices, I'm looking at Petrus and Masseto of course, somehow we don't often see many single varietal Merlot wines. Luckily, I managed to track a 100% Merlot wine that did not break my bank. But what about the elder Cabernet Franc? I feel we have been talking about it as an up-and-coming grape or one of the most underrated red grape varieties for a while now, and yet it still hasn't reached its promised glory. In Bordeaux blends, it usually plays a minor role, adding a bit of flavor depth with its herbaceous kick and meaty, savory character. It is not as full-bodied as Cabernet Sauvignon or Merlot, so it might add a touch of lightness and energy through its elevated acidity. However, it is not well suited to the changing climate, and it seems that in certain areas its importance is fading. While Cabernet Franc is not usually described as a particularly difficult grape to work with, when you talk with winemakers, they will often list many specific needs of Cabernet Franc to make it perfect, which makes me think it can be quite finicky. Still, I firmly believe that this ancient grape variety, a parent to Cabernet Sauvignon and Merlot, is truly misunderstood, maybe even more so than Merlot. And it is quite difficult to find it as a monovarietal wine outside Loire Valley, but I managed. So today we're going to taste 4 wines. One is a blend of the 3 grape varieties I mentioned, Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot and Cabernet Franc, while the others monovarietal wines, each made from one of those blended grapes. But now, let's taste! As always, these wines were poured by my cameraman, so I don't know which one is which. And I also feel like I failed to mention that they are not necessarily all coming from Bordeaux. It is just one is blend and the rest are made from the blended grape varieties, but they are monovarietal wines. So wine number 1. I feel like I'm going to end this tasting with my teeth looking like someone from Walking Dead. Yes, because they're all very deep in color, including this one. Okay, so wine number 1, it is actually quite shy. It has very beautiful nose. It has ripe fruit flavors. It shows a bit of black currant, it does. And it shows a bit of blueberries and ripe raspberries, ripe cherries, and some of that cedar wood character. But it is not very loud or screaming. Let's taste that wine. Okay, wow. But this wine, it is packed with freshness. I mean, the acidity is really elevated and high. The tannins are mouth coating. They're really focused though, but it is definitely a fresh and lively youngster. There's a lot of things that could develop into something more complex or more nuanced, and I think this is really young and kind of energetic wine. My first guess would be that this is classic Bordeaux blend, but I usually am a bit shy and I want to taste a bit more before I come to my final conclusions. So let's move to wine number 2. All right, so this wine immediately shows riper fruit character on the nose. It is plummy, and there's a lot of vanilla as well. Sweet toast. It definitely has seen oak. And it is just so ripe and inviting. However, on the palate, this wine still packs a lot of freshness. The tannin here is not as prominent as in wine number 1. It is softer, it is rounded, and overall this wine kind of has that full body and kind of fleshy character, which I would expect from Merlot. But I mean, this is a wine world and every grape, every terroir manifests itself differently. So I am still quite confused. Therefore, I will try wine number 3. Wow. Okay, this one has absolutely beautiful, elegant nose. You also have these ripe blackberries, maybe a little bit of that black currant and ripe strawberries. It is this very well put together, beautifully made, polite style of wine. You feel a bit of that cedar wood, that tobacco leaf coming from oak here as well, but it is just intervened within the fruit and it definitely does not overpower it. The fruit is what shines in this wine. This, at the moment, from all the 3 wines I have smelled, and I will taste it in a second, this kind of stopped me for a bit. I think this in the glass presents itself absolutely beautiful. And it is opening up as well. Wow, this is lovely. Let's taste it. I'm sorry, but the concentration and the intensity on the nose for this wine, it is just so inviting. It is seductive. Wow. Wow. And the acidity, it is quite high. It is lively, it is energetic. It is juicy style of wine. The tannin here is so beautifully made. It is almost velvety. I rarely describe tannins of Bordeaux grape varieties as velvety, but here they're just kind of masterfully made, really beautiful. And they kind of resemble a soft fabric. It adds a beautiful texture. I'm not sure yet. I will taste wine number 4 and come to my final conclusion, but actually I might change my decision. This might as well be the blend. I don't know, but because it just shows that kind of harmony. Let's taste wine number 4 and we'll decide. So wine number 4. Okay, so this wine on the nose shows ripe, rich fruits, but there's layers of pyrazines, something green. So that is definitely a Cabernet family grape, and we know that. But there's also something earthy, some depth like black earth or hints like that. But like the fruit keeps trying to popping out through that earthiness. It does show notes of of some sweet toast. So definitely here some oak has been present during the élevage. Yeah, overall it seems big and kind of bold style of wine. Let's taste it. What a beautiful acidity. I mean, here the acidity is elevated, juicy, lively. Tannin, it is not as well structured as for wine number 3. It is kind of bigger and bolder and kind of like a square sitting on the palate. It's just there. It is maybe not as finely grained, but it definitely adds beautiful structure to the otherwise really ripe and fleshy fruit style. What I have noticed here, it does show that kind of warming sensation coming from alcohol. And one grape variety that usually develops elevated alcohol levels is Merlot. But here the acidity is really beautiful and fresh. So I am slightly confused. Let me quickly taste through all the wines and come to my final conclusion, shall we? How do I look? Can I audition for Walking Dead? Is my mouth dark and black and rotten enough? So I feel like I want to come back to wine number 1 because when I retasted it, it showed a lot of greenness, a lot of pyrazines. They were really beautifully wrapped in the ripe fruit, but when you really pay attention to the wine, those pyrazines were hidden, but it kind of shows them at the end. And as I mentioned, the acidity was really elevated and lively. And what I thought, that greenness, that those green elements, not in unripe way, but as a character of a grape, together with that high acidity, it actually really well represents Cabernet Franc. So I would guess that that is Cabernet Franc. I will move to wine number 3 because that was the wine that I liked the best. Wine number 3 showed that purity of fruit and that elegance and that richness. So I thought it definitely has Cabernet Sauvignon in it. So it either would be a beautiful Bordeaux blend, or what I thought was very unique about it, because it stains glass. It is so deep in color that even the tears have color. Even the tears. And that I sometimes link more with New World. So I would want to say that this is Cabernet Sauvignon from Coonawarra from Australia. And because of the higher alcohol level of wine number 4 and maybe that luscious and kind of jolly style, I would want to name it Merlot, which leaves wine number 2 to be Bordeaux blend. I don't think that was very successful Bordeaux blend, and I'm really disappointed if that is true, because maybe it's not. It might as well be something different. Maybe let's maybe let's reveal the wines before I talk more nonsense about them. And so, wine number 1, I really enjoyed it. And I will say this, if it is Cabernet Franc, so I will give it 93 points. If it is something different, maybe 92, 91, because that pyrazine character, it makes sense for Cabernet Franc and sometimes for Cabernet Sauvignon. It does not always make sense to other grape varieties. So, 93 points. Okay, so this is very interesting wine. It is Saint-Emilion Grand Cru Hellebore. It is 100% Cabernet Franc. Rarely will you find a monovarietal wine in Bordeaux, and let alone Cabernet Franc in Saint-Emilion. Saint-Emilion usually is proud with their Merlot, but I think it was really beautiful wine, and that pyrazinic character gave layers of complexity to the wine. It added depth. So let's move to wine number 2. I will give this wine 80. I want to give it 88, but I think maybe it's too harsh. Maybe I should give 89. It will be 88. I was not particularly happy with this wine. Unfortunately. Okay, so this is the second label of Chateau Giscours. I really like this wine, actually. I have been in love with this producer for a while, so to taste this second label, yeah, maybe it was not the best bottle, you know, sometimes there are variations between the bottles, or maybe it was not the most successful vintage for them. I'm not sure. Overall, I do like this estate and I like their wines. I have been lucky enough to visit them. Maybe it was just fail from my side. Let's move to wine number 3. This was my number 1 wine from all of these 4. I really liked it. It was absolutely beautifully done, masterfully made, and I will give this wine 96 points. It was pleasure to enjoy. Okay, and this is Coonawarra. Coonawarra is well known for its Cabernet Sauvignon, and they grow their grapes on this reddish soil with high content of iron. And I have not been lucky enough to visit this estate or this region at all, but I really want to go. And I mean, this is amazing, and it does not cost a fortune. It was really, really beautiful wine. And I've never been really disappointed with their wines. I have been drinking them, I don't want to say a lot, but I have been buying their labels quite a lot, and usually they're great pleasure. So that leaves wine number 4 to be Merlot from Planeta, from Sicily, 2020. So this is 100% Merlot. Super difficult to find labels like that. If you, by the way, have some ideas outside the well-known, the usual suspects, those super expensive wines of great Merlots that I should taste, please let me know in the comments. I would like to expand my knowledge regarding the monovarietal Merlot wines. Shoot, I forgot to score the Planeta Merlot. I will give it 90 points. Maybe I'm slightly disappointed in myself. I thought it would be easier to identify these wines because I do think about these grape varieties as very distinct in their styles. But here, I needed a lot of time to spend with them to kind of really crack them open and understand them. But that is wine. That is why we love it. And another disappointment here for me was the Bordeaux. I was really looking forward for this specific wine, but there is one thing that we learned. I mean, we often read in these books that these grapes have to be blended together because they complement each other. They add, you know, acidity, body, fruit. And here in this tasting, the blend was actually the lowest scored wine from all of them 4. So yeah, sometimes it makes sense just to choose the monovarietal wine. Why not? If you happen to love your Bordeaux blend, I have another video where I tasted Bordeaux blends from across the world. Make sure to watch that next.